Every time you don't finish that last game the way you want to is a little bit of a disappointment. But thought overall for the season, a lot of success and things that I'm really excited about moving forward. Obviously, things to clean up, things to work through. But overall, I was really proud of the guys, their efforts, the staff. It's a lot of good things.
Ryan, I think it was after the 2023 draft when you guys drafted Jaden and Dontavian and the tight ends. You said the idea was for them to grow together with Jordan. Mm-hmm. Where do you think you're at, sort of in that process of growth, and where can it go?
Yeah, at the very current moment, we got some injured guys that we're gonna have to work through, right? But no, I think those guys did a good job, and I think I thought there was a period of time in the middle of the season where we were a very explosive football team, and so I think all those guys grew individually in different ways. It was interesting. I thought as we went through the season, guys took on different roles. Nobody really established their own roles, so to speak. I think every guy kind of took some turns. So we'll kind of see how that develops through the offseason and into next season. But I thought they did some really good things with Jordan.
Why did you get less explosive, do you think? Is it just the Watson injury, or were there other factors?
Well, certainly a guy like Christian, when you take him off the field, things change a little bit. But at the same thing, I think I think as we got to the last part of the season, we hit some walls that for whatever reason, obviously there were some better teams in there as well. But I did think we struggled at the end. But again, there was times I think that we were very explosive, and but that's kind of the NFL. There's other teams on the other side of the ball, and they can limit you. Those coaching staffs, they're as we become explosive during a certain part of the season, they're going to be studying those things and try to stop us, and they're pretty good at their jobs too.
So I'm guessing when you walked out of the field against San Francisco last year that you felt super good about the direction of the team and maybe bigger things were at hand?
Yeah, same way now. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think obviously, whatever, you try not to live too much right in the moment, but whenever you lose the last game, no different than last season, you're pretty disappointed because there's an opportunity in front of you that you lose. But at the same time, I think, this team had a lot of growth during the year, particularly individual players. I thought, we added some new players into this group and a new defensive coordinator, and I thought there were some really good things that as we take more steps together, I'm excited about.
You had the youngest team in the NFL this past 2 years, and last year obviously all that youth kind of rise together. This year down the stretch, not so much. Where's the line in terms of it's a young man's game, obviously, but needing to maybe have some more of that seasoned veteran experience here?
Well, I know we're young from a number perspective, but obviously these guys they've played a lot of football and playoff football at that, so I don't, there's certainly we're young from a number perspective, but from an experience perspective, I don't think we're young at all. And I think that's an excuse that we just don't have any use for. Certainly we add veterans all the time. I mean, we added, 2 in free agency this year and some other guys off the street that significantly helped us this year. So that'll always be part of our process. But no, I feel really good about our team and the experience we have. I don't think experience held us back at all.
Brian, you mentioned the injuries. Outside of Christian, especially with Romeo and the head injuries, any concerns going into next season that any of these injuries could linger into next year?
Yeah, no, I think there's obviously some things that guys will clean up, during the offseason, but I think mostly Christians will, bleed into next season. Obviously, that's a big injury that takes some time, but I think that would be the only one right now.
Did Watson have surgery yet?
Not yet.
Can you guys afford to keep Jaire after these last 2 years on and off the field because of what you're paying him going into next year?
Yeah, I think we'll work through that. Certainly we can. I know it's been really frustrating for not only him as a player, but us as a club. Just when you have a player, who's done for what he's done for us in the past, and then not being able to get him out on the field consistently. That's tough. It's tough on the player, it's tough on the organization. So we'll kind of, as we start, we're at the beginning stages of just kind of gathering information. As a whole, before we start looking at next year and how we're going to lay this thing out, but we could. I mean, obviously, when he's healthy and he's ready to play, he's a pretty good player. So,
Brian, do you guys believe in? Do you personally believe in windows for a team, a window for success?
No, I think the way we're pretty process driven around here of trying to keep, being, in this thing every single year. I think I've talked before in here. You try not to look too far down the road, more than 2 or 3 years out. But I'm not a big believer in windows.
In year 3 as a starter, Rodgers won a Super Bowl. Year 6, Favre did. Where do you think Jordan Love is by the end of this past season, and what do you think is on deck for next year?
No, I think we're, and I know Matt's probably talked about it as well. I think we're very, very excited about his growth, not only as a player, but what he's doing in our locker room as a leader. I've talked many times about how even keel he is, and I think, his growth and the way he manages our football team has been pretty impressive. Obviously, he went through some things this year, battled through some injuries that he, hadn't done that before. Came out the other side of it, and was really proud of him how he went through that. And yeah, he's just he's leading our team exactly how we want him to do it. So I'm excited about it.
Brian, just going back to the Jaire situation, is there a disconnect between you, this organization, and Jaire that you're aware of?
No. No. I mean, again, there's frustration, I think, on both sides from the fact that you can't get out there, and that's tough. I mean, I feel for him, because he wants to be out there and he wants to play. But no disconnect.
Brian, what do you think is next for this defense with the transition that was made this year on top of what you got from your rookie draft picks?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I thought Jeff Hafley did an amazing job coming in here in year one. Those guys really grew together and they were a unit, and I thought we were playing our best football on defense at the end of the year. So. I'm a big believer that every year, is a different year, but I do think some of the things we went through this year, we had a number of rookies play a lot of snaps for us, and so, along with X coming in, from another team. So I think as those guys grow together, that communication will consistently get better and better. And so, yeah, really excited about where the defense is right now.
On Monday, that the vision for this defense obviously going in was to rush traditionally with the 4 down line and drop 7 in coverage. Do you still feel like you have those pieces that can do that at the level that you guys need to do that in this league?
Yeah, I do. I think you're always looking, with pass rushers, you can never have enough. And I thought there were times this year we did that. We were able to rush with 4. I mean, I think every team in the league, that's how you'd prefer to do it, right? Rush with 4 and affect the quarterback, which is 4. There was periods of time where we didn't do that well enough. There's no, I think everybody understands that, and that affects your football team. Again, I think. Half did a great job of marrying what we had together to make us I think we were a top 5, top 10 defense for sure. Again, I think the strides we took during the season were really, really impressive. The jumps, and I'm excited to see what he can do year 2. Jeff can do, just because he was in college for 4 years, so a lot of this improvement that we saw was quite frankly, it was more impressive than I thought maybe I would see. And I'm really excited to see what he does with our defense moving forward and whatever new pieces we might add.
How much of a transition were you expecting for those defensive front guys and going into the 4-3 coming into the season?
Yeah, no, I knew there'd be a little bit. I was encouraged in training camp just because I thought we were really humming in training camp at times. And then there was just some inconsistencies through the year. There was times we kind of broke out, and then there's times we'd have these lulls where we weren't probably playing as well as we would like. But those guys, I did like the way they worked together, and I do think we got a really good group in that room. This was the first time where they, all 4 of those front guys were in, both the ends and the inside guys were in the same room working together, and I think that was helpful.
How did you feel offensive line did this year? You were rotating a right guard, but your starting 5 got a lot of snaps in, and then talk about the challenge up against the Eagles, and you come out saying, boy, we got to add some depth there.
Yeah, I think, try never to overreact to one game, right? Take it as a whole. We spent a lot of time. But I thought our offensive line, particularly in pass pro, played really, really well all year, for the most part, with the exception of a couple games. But, no, I think all those guys, had good, had really solid years and improved. But, those big guys are hard to find, so that's never something we're not going to address. I think we've been pretty consistent in that in our time here. We very much believe that, with the exception of quarterback, winning in the trenches is how we need to get it done. And we got some decisions to make as we move forward on the offensive line, and as we go through that, there could be some shuffling around. But, getting Jordan Morgan back too, now that he's had the shoulder surgery, and getting him out there on a consistent basis, whether that be a tackle or guard or wherever we decide to play him, will be really helpful as well.
With Morgan, did you get enough of a feel of where his best spot might be, or not with how?
Yeah, you guys, and we've talked a lot about it here with the way we do offensive linemen in here. It's like versatility is everything, right? And we really do have a versatile group. So we're going to try to get the best 5 out there. We didn't see him as much at tackle, which is obviously what he played in college and what he was drafted as, just because at the time going into the season, the opportunities were going to lie inside. And so I think this offseason, just depending on kind of how everything, takes place through free agency, the draft, and those things, we'll kind of probably go into it the exact same way. Wherever we think, he's going to best fit is where he's going to see his snaps. But we're going to continue to lean on versatility. I mean, we got 3 or 4 guys on our line that could probably play 5 spots, and that's, I believe in that. I think every coach I've been around believes in that, and I think that's an asset that we have that not all teams have.
And would you be willing to move Zach Tom if you felt that might be?
Yeah, I mean, again, if it was best for the Green Bay Packers, absolutely. I think he's established himself pretty well as a tackle in this league. Certainly, I think he could play both left and right tackle. I think when we drafted him, we also thought he could be a very, very good center if we needed him to be. Again, he's one of those guys that could probably play all 5 spots. But he's established himself pretty well in this league as a tackle.
Back to Ryan's questions about the pass rush, you've obviously invested a lot of money in draft picks there. Mm-hmm. So where do you think the disconnect was with a bunch of guys who had won in the past or you thought could win, just weren't able to get it done consistently this year?
Yeah, I think sometimes that's just the way the NFL season goes. I think, again, there was some transition to a new scheme. I think we didn't grow into that consistent front like we had hoped, but there were times where we showed it, so I know it's capable. I think we got the right guys. They're workers in there. I think they're all passionate about the game. They're unselfish team guys, so I expect us to get better there.
After the game in Philly, Josh Jacobs was saying that he's going to try to get some guys in here without speculating, of course, on who that might be. Do you view this as an offseason where you need to go out and aggressively pursue the market, whether that be free agency, trade?
I think I view every offseason that we have to attack it aggressively. The opportunities that present themselves, whether that be free agency, trade, are different every year. Every year there's not going to be a Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney out there to go get. So we'll see kind of what transpires through the free agency class. Who gets re-signed, who doesn't. If there's salary cap casualties, if there's trade opportunities, all those. But yeah, no, I think we always operate under the kind of aggressive mindset. But we have a process that we go through, and we'll see what's available. And if it's right for us, we're going to attack it. But if it's not, then if they're not there, it's not there.
I know you don't know what's going to be out there, but last year you eat all of that dead money from Aaron. I mean, from your side of the equation, how good do you feel about being able to explore every avenue like you like to talk about?
Yeah.
And the wherewithal you'll have.
No, I feel really good. I mean, Russ does a fantastic job with our cap, and all the decisions we've made over the past few years has put us in a situation where we're in pretty good shape right now. Again, we got to keep making good decisions, and it's never a one-year thing. You're looking at 2-3 years down the road as far as how these things impact things. We have a lot of good players that are under rookie contracts right now, and we got to make sure that we're able to, extend those guys when that time comes. But no, I feel really good about our ability to go do what we need to do to field a championship level team. Again, the opportunities that are going to be out there are unknown right now. We'll see how that goes. But no, we're in a better situation than we have been over the past 2 or 3.
Go ahead, Chase.
You said you didn't, not every free agent class is going to have a Jacobs or an X.
Yeah.
I know you try not to have expectations, but those weren't just home runs. Those were like walk-off grand slams, right?
I appreciate that.
What were your expectations, or what were your hopes, and how far did those two exceed them?
I think the players that they were proven players in this league, right? And I knew what kind of players they were. You never know when you bring them into your environment if that's going to continue or not. That's the one thing. These guys aren't robots. So I think the thing, and we were hopeful, and we certainly had done the work and expected these guys to be really positive leaders for our football team because they were captains in the places they came from. Certainly, we had spent a lot of time studying these guys, both these guys, whether at the University of Alabama, and we kind of knew them. But again, guys change as they grow, and you're never really sure. And I think that where they exceeded my expectations, I think, is how quickly they embraced our culture here, and then how much they positively impacted it at such a fast pace, I guess. So I think that's really happy to have those guys. I think that they're about the right stuff. They certainly made us better this year, and I expect that they will continue to do that as we go.
There's a lot of years where cap-wise, you guys are always way under. then obviously COVID happened and you kind of had to borrow. You want to get back to that past cap management where you've always got a bunch of money to go re-sign guys, or is it okay to keep, I don't say borrowing, but doing extensions and restructures and all that kind of stuff?
I think, certainly you'd love to be in that situation every year where you have a lot of flexibility to do what you need to do. I think depending on the opportunities that are out there and your football team or where you're at, can dictate some of that. Again, I think, whenever there are players like X or Josh that are out there, which isn't very often, I think it's, even if you don't have great flexibility, you have to really consider adding those kind of players because there's just not that many of them. Again, I feel really good where we're at right now. Would love to stay in that kind of flexibility year to year. We'll certainly try to do that, but at the same time, if we kind of have to do some different things because we have an opportunity to acquire a player that can impact our team like these two guys did, we'll do it.
You're really, really excited about Jordan Love's growth. For him to take that next step going into his third season, where do you want to see more growth in his game?
Yeah, I think and this is really more for our football team and an offense as a whole, but I think just consistency, being able to control the game whenever we need to control the game. I think there was times we were exceptionally explosive this year, but I want to see us be able to control the game, however we need to, whether that's the run game, the pass game. You always want to be explosive. Because as Matt says, that leads to points. But at the same time, situational football and being more consistent there as an offense, I think is something we can be better at, and I think we will.
The other top quarterbacks in this conference, they all seem to have that receiver that they can go to when they're matchup at any point consistently. Do you need to get that guy for Jordan to be able to get to that point?
Yeah, I think we have some of those guys, and I think we don't have just one, but. I think historically, if you look at a lot of the team, very rarely do teams that have one receiver that's super heavy with targets. That doesn't usually play out well for playoffs and success there. I think we're certainly looking for these guys that we have currently to take a step into that role where they are more consistent on the down basis. Certainly, if there's somebody outside of our building right now, whether it's the draft, free agency, that makes some sense for us, we'll certainly look to do that. But we're also looking for these guys to continue to grow and hopefully grow into that space.
So, how do you kind of view that concept just from 30,000 feet, right? Because I said this to Matt LaFleur, not Schneidman, yesterday or the other day, that, you look back on the history, and you've been here as long as me, like it's Sharp, it's Brooks, it's Freeman, it's Driver, it's and they're all homegrown guys that eventually became your ones. Would you prefer to see someone, again, I know you want to have a lot of guys involved, but would you like to see someone elevate to be him?
I think I'd like them all to elevate. The best one I was around was when, kind of in that 9-10 stage where, Donald was still here, but Greg was probably, if you had to say there was one, but I don't even know if you would say that. There were so many good players. There were some emerging guys, like Jordy was emerging, and James. I know the term number one receiver gets thrown around a lot, and I think that just depends on how you do, what that means to you, What I'd like to again, is I'd like our football team to get to a point where we can win in situational football better than we have right now. And I think for us to do that group's going to have to take some steps, and I think they will. I think they're on the right track. Again, we're dealing with some injury stuff that these guys are going to have to get through before next season, but they are on the right track.
All right, what do you think you have in Quay and Devontae Wyatt as you approach that decision on their options?
No, super fired up about both those guys' seasons this year. I think Quay continued to take a big leap, and another guy that struggled through injuries at the end of the year, but he was really impactful for us this year. Continues to be a great leader for us. So certainly think we would love to have him around here for longer than just a couple more years. He's that kind of guy. And then DY was probably our most consistent pass rusher from the inside this year. So both of them dealt with some injuries and was really proud of how they attacked those and played through some things this year. I think both of those guys had their best years as pros so far.
During the bye week, you talked about the cornerback depth. You've got a couple free agents from that position group upcoming. What's your outlook on that position group going into?
Yeah, we're down numbers. I will say this. I thought, when we moved Keyshawn to the outside and he consistently played there, I thought he played really, really well. Not only in coverage, but as a tackler as well in the run game. And then I think when CV went out there, I think when both those guys were playing on the outside consistently, we just got more stable, you know, with Bull inside and those two guys outside. So that stability, I think, you know, really helped us down the stretch. Excited that we need numbers, you know, right now, because we do have some free agents coming up. So we're going to need numbers and kind of just see where that room goes. But you know, and then obviously Ja will impact that as well. So, you know, we'll just kind of see how all that goes. But I was really, particularly, you know, CV, you know, fought through some injuries, came back, really helped us at the end of the season. And then Keyshawn being able to kind of solidify us on as an outside corner where he'd always played inside for the most part, most of his career. I think he certainly has proved that he can play out there at a high level.
As you look at Jordan's past season, he obviously had 3 noteworthy injuries. I'm sure other stuff that bothered him throughout the course of the season as well. Just how much did those injuries affect him through the course of the year, in your opinion?
That would be a better question for him, you know, really. You know, I think that's part of his growth in the National Football League is this, you know, quarterbacks in the leagues, they got to play through that stuff. And I thought he did a really good job of that, manage it during the week and then getting to game day and playing at a high level. So the question you asked is really a question for him. I thought he played at a high level, a significant part of the season. Obviously, certainly there's some games and plays he would probably want back, but I never really thought that overall for the season that the injuries were really holding him back. I think early when he came back after that 2 games that he missed, you know, you could tell he wasn't quite moving around like he normally did, but I still think he played pretty solidly for us. But you know, that's a better question for him.
Would you like McManus to be back after what he gave you this
We
year?
would. I had a good conversation with him before he left, and obviously, you know, I mean, you guys know as well how he solidified that journey we were going on. Obviously, he's a veteran guy. I think the thing that was so neat about, you know, being around him is just not only his confidence, but his ability to adjust no matter where we were, what weather we had. You know, and I think really our specialist group with Matt and Daniel, you know, if we were able to get Brandon back, I think, you know, certainly that would be make me feel very, very, very good about that group.
So your division turned out to be really tough. I know how much you like to keep a pulse on what's really going on with your team. What do you see that encourages you out of these second and third year players that they're going to come back, you know, really ready for the challenge?
I think it's the way they work. You know, I think, you know, this group as they've grown together over the past 2 years, like I think that's the encouraging thing that's always been for me is they're always working at a high level. They're always, you know, reacting and to what the message Matt's giving them, their coaches are giving them. They're not blaming things. You know, the locker room is really strong. So that's always been encouraging for me, that they're moving in the right direction. When you have that, you know there's room for improvement and all those things, but you know they're going to get there because of their work ethic and what they're doing. So certainly over the past few days, as the exit interviews, you know, as we're talking to a lot of their players, and you know, I think the realization of the opportunity that they didn't, you know, they let go, you know, this last game and at the end of the season, and how much that bothered them. You know, again, I think that just tells me we got the right kind of guys in that room.
Brian, are you both excited and kind of bummed that Jaire Sullivan might be? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's both. It's bittersweet. I'll say this. You know, one of the things that yeah, I've been here a long time, and like I think it's very much very prideful when guys get opportunities like this. And I think it's very, very rewarding for me to see these guys go through that. When you're in this business, you always have kind of those goals, and when you get to that point where that's a reality, I've been there, and I know how important it is to him, and I'm super excited that he might get a chance at one of these jobs. I want that for all our guys, and we certainly spend a lot of time in the way we set up our process that these guys are ready for that, and I think he's absolutely ready. I can't imagine you know, a better candidate out there. I'm certainly very, very biased. But whoever gives him an opportunity, he's gonna do an outstanding job. He's you know, he's really impacted our organization in so many different ways, and he'll be missed. But we also have a lot of guys that I think are ready to move into that space, and if that's the case. But selfishly, I'd like him back. But you know, I think he's absolutely 100% ready for this opportunity and excited for him.
Every time you come down after the draft, you always thank all those guys. And so I know you have a deep bench, but in what ways has John meant that much to you? Because you guys have obviously been together.
Sure. One, I mean, you know, it's funny. He's we've worked together a long time, and it's you know, I was a Southeast scout, then he was a Southeast scout. I was a college director, he was a college director. I was director of player personnel. You know, like, so he's kind of, we have a lot to talk about because we've been through a lot of the same things. But we're both coaches' kids, you know, and I think there's 1,000 ways that I appreciate John Eric and what he's meant to this organization. But one of them is just the fact that he ain't afraid to tell me something uncomfortable, or if, you know, if he thinks we're going down a different thing. And I think for me, that's so important. And I got a lot of guys in that room that aren't afraid to do that. But, you know, for me, when the decisions that I have to make that are under my kind of umbrella, guys like John Eric, and I have a lot more here, but guys like John Eric make me very, very confident because I have those guys by my side when I make those decisions. You know what I mean? So they're involved in everything. And they give me a lot of confidence that we've done the work. It's the right decision when that time comes for us to make decisions. So,
Brian, when you look at the team, I guess what do you feel is the key for them to like take that next step and kind of get over the hump when next year when they're lining up, you know, the Lions, the Vikings, the Eagles, that you know, they can get those?
Yeah, you know, last year I think I was getting the same question about the 49ers, and you know, so it changes from year to year. Next year's team is going to look different, you know, and they're going to have to grow together. You know, I thought in 2023, I thought we were playing overall as a football team our very best football at the end of the season, which is very important to me. I think that's kind of how, if we're going to go chase championships, you got to be doing that. And I think this year, I think in some areas we were, but in some areas we weren't, right? So I think part of our goal, obviously, is with the new team that we have next year is, again, you can't skip steps. You got to go through the work and to come together and be unselfish and kind of commit to the team, and then hopefully get to the point at the end of the season where you're playing your best football and actually have a chance to make a run at it.
Brian, what's your philosophy about trading a really high pick for a player?
Better be right, you know, because those picks are, you know, I think, and I'm assuming you're talking about a player, like a veteran player, right? Yeah. When you trade a high pick for a veteran player, you're trading a young, really good contract for a player who's proven, but probably expensive, you know. So you're giving up a pick in salary cap space. So I think you gotta weigh that. You know, and if it's the right player, if you feel he can be a dynamic player that can change your football team, I think you got to consider that because there's not many of those guys out there. But I think you have to also understand what you're giving up, you know, and so that's kind of my fault. We haven't really, I'm trying to think how many times we've done that around here, you know. So, yeah, I mean, there was one back in Favre, right? I mean, they traded a first-round pick for him, right? I'm trying to think if there's, I'm drawing a blank, but I'm trying to think if we've traded any first-round picks since I've been here for a player, you know. Again, but it doesn't happen a lot at all. But we've gotten some first-round picks for players, you know. But yeah, I mean, certainly if that player can impact our football team in a significant way, you have to consider that.
With that said, especially with the youth of this roster, is adding a player who might be on the backside of their prime and only give you a couple really good years. Is that something that you see value in, or is that something you'd like to stay away from?
It all depends who the player is, you know, and what he could give you. I don't particularly want to see somebody on the backside of their career. I don't think that's something I'd be particularly interested in. You know, how old was Reggie White when Ron signed him? I mean, he was in his 30s, I believe, you know, but he wasn't on the backside of his career by any means, you know. So I think it just depends on the player and what you think he has in front of him, you know. So, you know, it just depends on the player.
Goody, speaking of Ron, you know, he used to say that if you got 3 guys that were eventual starters out of a draft class, you've done pretty well, right? Mm-hmm. Has that paradigm changed? I mean, my God, Cooper tilted the field in your favor. Mm-hmm. Bullard played well for you. Williams played really well for you. He had a good draft class on the other side of the ball last year. Have you, especially with your belief that you have to live through the growing pains and come out on the other side with what they become, have you changed kind of the way you view the draft as not just a long-term investment, but also these guys can help us right away investment?
That's a good question. I know Bill Walsh at one point said, you know, a good draft pick's one that gives you 3 or 4 years of service in offense, defense, or special teams. You know, like I said, I think it's hard to kind of put, because again, every draft class is different, right? And where you're picking every year is different. So to kind of judge it in that way, I do think that, you know, in the era of the salary cap, your young players have to play for you, right? They can't. It's the days of let's sit them for 4 years and then see what we got. You can't do that anymore. I mean, these guys got to get out there and play, and they got to make up your football team. And maybe it's just on special teams, but they got you can't. It would be really, really hard to field a super veteran team with the way the salary cap and the way the markets are these days. But we've always been draft and develop. We believe in that. The development of our own players will always be a high priority for us. I think it's one of the benefits we have of working here in Green Bay is we're allowed to give guys time to really develop, and that's certainly something that we'll continue to do. But I don't know if my mindset has changed on the draft. I do think when I first started, the salary cap has impacted it for sure.
In general, I know you always say don't fall in love with a player too, right? But like, you get Cooper where you got him. You got Reed last year. I think you traded back twice and you still got him. Like, I'm not impugning your wisdom as a talent evaluator, but is there a little bit of luck that the guy's still there? Like, were those two guys that you were like, I really like them, I hope they're there, and they were there? Because they obviously had impacts as rookies.
Yeah, I think there's always a little luck in the draft, I think. But for me, when you let the board kind of speak to you. And you've done the work for a reason, so you need to trust it, And if you have a number of players, that you feel good about, that you can move back and take a player, then I think it's important that you do that. Most of the times that I've gotten antsy about a player, I've probably been incorrect. You know what I mean? So, we try to do the work and let the process take us to the answers. And in those cases, it did. I mean. I remember when we took Elton Jenkins in the second round. We loved Elton, but we had like 5 or 6 guys, with DK Metcalf and Debo said there was a bunch of guys right there. A couple went ahead of us, but we could have moved back. We didn't. We took Elton, and that's been a great pick for us, And so, but there's always every time you're selecting, the board is different. Sometimes you have a lot of options. Sometimes you have barely any. Sometimes you're in a certain round and you're picking from the round below it because that's what you have left, So if you've done the work correctly, the board should treat you right, And then when it doesn't, you look back and you try to see where you went wrong. But you're also dealing with human beings, and sometimes it had nothing to do with anything other than they're human beings and didn't adjust to your environment. So there's a lot of things to it. But I do think, as you guys know, because our process has been in place here for a long time, we believe in it strongly. And if I don't trust that, I'm not doing my job.
More, please.
Just because of the importance of the position and the uncertainty, I'll ask like 100 center questions at once here. But what do you think of the way that Josh Myers developed over the years, the way he played? Would you like him back, and do you have any feel for Jacob Monk?
Yeah, I'd like all these guys back, because you guys don't like I wish our roster was 150, and we can just go from there. But Josh, I thought he had his best year, and he dealt with some things during this year that were tough, and I thought he fought through it like a champion, and certainly an asset to our football team. I know Jordan trusts him very much, as his center, and we'll kind of, obviously he's a UFA, so we'll see where all that goes. But I can't say enough good things about Josh Myers, not only as a player but as a leader. He really does embody kind of a Green Bay Packer and kind of what we're looking for, and how they're wired. So, again, I thought he had a really good year, fought through some things, got out of that game at the end there where we really thought it might be something more than it is. I think he's going to be good. We think that's going to be something, maybe avoided a potentially tough injury. So, he's. I look back at that one, and I'm really glad that we've had him for the last 4 years.
We spent a lot of time today talking about a lot of really good things, right? A lot of growth and a lot of really good players you have on your team. You talked a little bit about inconsistency, but I mean, the bottom line is you did finish 11-6, and you didn't get to where you wanted to go. So as you go into 2025, like, what is your challenge? Like, what is your, hey, this is title town, this is about championships, we didn't get to what disappointed you about this year that you need to be better about?
Yeah, you always have some disappointments in the year. I think for me, the thing that's been on my mind, I think, as we've concluded this season, is we need to continue to ramp up our sense of urgency. These opportunities don't come. The life of a player in the National Football League is not very long. We got a bunch of good guys in that locker room. We got a bunch of talented guys in that locker room, and I think it's time that we start competing for championships, right? And I think they're ready. I think like I said, I think they are wired right. I think that group is is the kind of guys that can do that. But, you know, at the end of the day, you got to go do it, you know. And we fell short in some areas this year that, like they always are every year, a little frustrating. But at the same time, you know, I didn't think they blinked, you know. And so I'm excited about the group. But the sense of urgency, not getting complacent. You know, some of these guys have now proven themselves to be NFL football players and have attained that. But, like, you know, what's out there for us as a team that we're willing to commit to and sacrifice for, and you know, so that's kind of the, if I'm looking at one thing, that'd be it.
Thank you, guys.
Right. Thanks, guys. You need this.